All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here on a Wednesday, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home, excuse me, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Got a big show lined up for you here today. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, he's going to hang out with us coming up here around the corner. He's a Raiders fan, so I don't think it's really the flex that I think it is, but my bad team beat his bad team this past weekend. So we'll talk about that with him, as well as Joe Burrow returning on Thanksgiving night. So we got plenty of NFL coming up around the corner, but it's a big week. It's the week of the game. It's Michigan week. It's rivalry week. We got a big one coming up on Saturday, and there's no better way to kick off the show than with the voice of the Buckeyes himself, Mr. Paul Keels, who joins us now. Mr. Keels, welcome in, sir. How are you?
I'm good, Justin. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, and I appreciate your time here today. Look, I was doing a little homework today, and I was going back trying to figure out the very first game that you ever called. With the Michigan game, obviously it's the game. You remember your first game? Like, you remember the nerves you felt the morning you woke up? What was different about that game versus any other game you've called?
Well, I don't know if you have the right game. The first one I did was in 1981.
Oh, wow. I do not have the right one then.
That's when I was working in Detroit at one of the 5 stations that were broadcasting Michigan games. And that's the one where Art Schleister scored the decisive touchdown for Ohio State. And there was a key block thrown by Von Brodnax from Xenia to clear the way for Art Schleister. And the crazy thing about that season, Iowa ended up going to the Rose Bowl. They were co-champions, but a lot of that had to do with Iowa, and Ohio State did not play that year. Now, what you may have been thinking of was 1998.
Yes.
My first year doing the Ohio State games when Michael Wiley ran wild early in the football game and got Coach John Cooper one of his rare moments of joy against Michigan.
So now you said originally you were calling Michigan games before Ohio State games?
Absolutely. There were 5 stations in the Detroit area that did the games. And the reason that went on, Michigan's athletic director at the time, Don Canham, collected rights fees from all 5 of the broadcast outlets. So I was in my 20s, early in my career, and worked doing the Michigan. And I can tell you this, Justin, every year that Ohio State and Michigan played, something felt strange about it being an Ohio native doing the games for a Detroit station.
Well, I'm sure. And that was going to be kind of the segue to the next question. Like, we had, Coach Tressel on this week. I've spoke with Keith Byers and a couple other former Buckeyes. And, we know it's a different game when a coach wakes up for the week of the game. We know it's a different game when the players wake up the week of the game. Even us as fans, we feel different waking up during Michigan week. But, what's your sense when you wake up as a broadcaster? I mean, do you still get nervous for the call of this type of game? Like, what is it about this game that separates it from the others that you call from a broadcaster's perspective?
Well, a few things. Number one, you've had a whole body of work of not just Ohio State, but Michigan to try and pay attention to as you're preparing for it, as opposed to, week 1, week 2, week 3, you don't really know what you're going to see from Ohio State or the opponent. Generally, like this year, there's a lot at stake. And so that adds to the excitement. I think when you couple what's happened the last 4 years with Ohio State coming up short in that game, that adds to some of the enthusiasm. But also we'll say this too, Justin, and we've gotten this question when it comes to some of the games that either aren't on traditional TV, that people can't get it, and people have asked, well, do you put more emphasis in doing games when you know the TV audience is challenged to get to the TV? Well, no. I think you put as much effort into each and every game, sometimes even more into some of the other games, because there's a chance that more players are going to play. You've got to be familiar with, second string, third string, walk-ons, things like that. But there is a difference about this game just because of the excitement, because of the history more than anything.
I got a kick out of this when I was looking for the date of your first game or whatever. I came across just it's a Michigan blog post, but all the headline was the game from the loser's perspective. And I just happened to click on it, and it says, this is from a Michigan fan. It says, I've watched the game several times now. Is there a link to where I can listen and watch the Buckeye radio team calling the game? I want to take in their misery. I'm just, do you give the fans what they're asking for with the misery? I love that they want to just hear you call the final moments of a loss, unfortunately. But people get a kick out of that stuff.
I can't remember the exact year. It might have been 2 or 3 years ago. On that subject, I got an email from a Michigan fan who had to be in the state of Ohio and had to listen to the game. And obviously he was happy with the result, but he was very complimentary about how we handled it. and describing what had happened, the disappointment for Ohio State. So that always meant a lot. And, the game's about the players. It's about the coaches. It's about what goes on there. And as disappointing as it was last year and the last 4 years with the result, you still have to do justice to the game. And so that's where a lot of our focus is.
We had Coach Tressel on this week, and one of the things that him and I talked about was, it stinks that it had to be a Michigan loss to kind of maybe propel this, and maybe it wasn't the loss itself, but it was the coaching job of Ryan Day a year ago. You think about kind of the way he looked after that game and just like the out-of-body experience almost, but somehow that guy and his staff was able to get this team to rally and buy back in and go on that historic run to win the inaugural 12-team college football playoff national championship. So we were kind of discussing that. You had a chance. I was listening to the coach's show earlier today. You got a chance to sit down with Coach Day. What kind of vibes, what's Ryan Day like today versus previous seasons? I mean, he's more locked in. I know people all want to know those type of questions. Ryan Day, he wasn't locked in before. He's locked in now. What was Ryan Day like today on the coach's show, from your opinion?
He was really good. And, maybe one of the differences, too, this time of year with the way things go with the holiday being tomorrow, we did the show without the client audience that we normally have. So, that maybe helps relax just a little bit. Not that he doesn't mind being around the client audience, but the thing the sense you get, Justin, is that what he and the coaching staff have tried to do is make this week as close to normal as any other week. Not certainly understanding the importance of the opponent, the talent of the opponent, understanding that this will be the most talented team that they'll face. But they've tried not to change their routine. They've tried not to make things so generally different that it's just a repeat of what they've been doing week after week, going about business the same way. So just not only the coach's show, but with some of the interviews that I have to do with him during the week, he's been really good. Now, maybe a little shorter in some responses, but not a lot, and no noticing or no feeling of tension or nervousness or anything like that.
What do you say to people who say that because of the expansion of the playoff, that it's lessened the rivalry, or what, everyone has a different take and opinion and feel and vibe, that the rivalry today is not what it once was? From your perspective, what do you say to people when they bring that up to you?
Well, I think it's changed it some. It does. I don't know that it lessens it because you still have the history that's a big part of it. And those of us of a certain age, we like to hang on to things like that, especially Bo and Woody and the 10-year war. It's not the end all as far as it been with last year being a great example. You lose the game, it doesn't end your season. And it's ironic too, because there is a scenario of the 7 scenarios that exist. These two teams could end up playing in a second consecutive week in the Big Ten championship game if some unlikely things happen. But I think it's just kind of changed where things go after this game. There's still the intense feelings toward your rival. There's still the respect that exists. There's still the fact that these two schools recruit a lot of the same players. So I don't know that it's lessened the intensity. It's just changed what the result can be.
Radio voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes, Paul Keels, hanging out with us here today on a Wednesday. Usually kicks off the show with us on Thursday, but something's going on tomorrow. Turkey Day. It's Thanksgiving. So we moved Paul up, and we appreciate him giving us time today. Taking a quick scope around the Big Ten. Paul, number 2, Indiana. It's not the rivalry that's Ohio State, Michigan, or anything else, but it's their in-state rivalry. Of course, you have Indiana, Purdue, the number 2 team in the country, looking to remain undefeated, setting up an Ohio State, Indiana potential Big Ten championship game a week later.
Yeah, it's hard to think that Indiana won't take care of business in that, considering, number one, how well they've played, and some of the struggles that Purdue is continuing to work through in the first year of Barry Odom as the head coach. You mentioned, the possible scenario of a rematch. That would involve Purdue beating Indiana for a possible Ohio State-Michigan rematch to occur in the Big Ten championship game. It's just hard to see that that's going to happen. It also would involve Oregon losing to Washington. So, but, Indiana coming off a bye week, it'll be interesting to see if they continue their same sharpness and just what kind of momentum that builds for them going into their first ever appearance in the Big Ten championship game, if they can pull that off.
You mentioned that Oregon Washington game. Obviously, Oregon number 6 in the country right now. They're 10-1. Their only loss, a close one against Indiana earlier in the season at home, of course. But they're a playoff team as of right now, of course. But you got to take care of business on the road against Washington. Still one of those weird matchups that, this is a Big Ten matchup now.
Yeah, and, longtime rivals because of their time in the Pac-8 and the Pac-10 and the Pac-12 or whatever number is associated with it, whatever year. But that'll be interesting. Oregon has kind of, in some ways, flown under the radar. But, you think about they basically eliminated USC with that victory they had last week. Their defense is playing very well. And while Dante Moore gets a lot of credit as quarterbacks do, they've got a guy that's a matchup problem. Their tight end, Kenyon Sadiq, is really a difficult matchup for people. So, they've played some of the best football of the year. And because Indiana beat them in Eugene, that kind of punctuates Indiana's resume. Maybe the single biggest win of anybody in the country this year.
Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes, with us here, just combing through the Big Ten. Of course, Penn State's been a nightmare of a season. 5-6. They take care of Nebraska last week, and they'll close out the regular season at Rutgers. Nightmare of a season, not nearly the season they expected. Looking to close it out with the win on the road.
Yeah, and playing at Rutgers, and the winner becomes bowl eligible, and the loser is not. So that's what's going to make that one interesting. And then you don't know what will happen with Penn State, but the coaching situation. Will they, if they make a bowl eligible victory, will they play in a bowl game? Depending on what happens with the coach and all of that, I think we'll start to see some of the coaching dominoes fall here real soon. And Rutgers trying to get to a bowl for a third consecutive week. So that's kind of the main storyline connected to that game.
All right, and last but not least, of course, the game that's going to put you in position to work on Saturday, of course. Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State's on the road. You see the forecast for that. There might be some snow. It's going to be cold. It's pretty much everything you want in a rivalry matchup, and that's what we're going to potentially get on Saturday.
Well, and the big question from the Ohio State standpoint is the health of Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, both of whom didn't play last week. And Ryan Day, as we've talked about, has been very consistent. He doesn't give injury updates. We won't really know anything until the availability report comes out early Saturday morning. Not having both of them, not having either of them, certainly is a detriment to Ohio State. But the one thing that would encourage you a little bit, and especially, Justin, what you said about the weather, we've seen the running game the last 2 weeks start to look like the running game that everybody wanted to be. Now, again, it's against UCLA and against Rutgers, and you're going up against one of the top rushing defenses in the country. But there seems to be a good feeling that they've turned the corner with their run, maybe to create some balance. But also, this is where you really look at what Ohio State's defense can do, continuing to play at the high level against a team that's had success running the football, even though they didn't have Jordan Marshall last week. So, and it sounds like Jordan Marshall is expected to play for Michigan this coming weekend. Can this defense cause some confusion for Bryce Underwood? He's grown up nicely as a freshman quarterback, but can they affect him?
Yeah, and you lightly brought it up. I was going to say whether it's injuries or the weather, if it takes the pass game, not completely out of it, but if it obviously, kind of dials it back a bit and it becomes a run game versus run game, that's going to be the big interesting dynamic that everyone's going to be looking for coming up on Saturday.
No question. No question.
Well, it's always a good one. It's always an interesting one, and hopefully it's the result that we've been looking for the last 4 years, nonetheless. But Paul Keels, radio voice of the Buckeyes. Paul, thank you so much. Looking forward to chatting with you next week to preview what we think is the Big Ten championship game. But before that, just want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for your time today.
Likewise. Same to you, Justin.
All right, good stuff. Radio voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels, awesome enough to give us some time. If you jumped in the middle of that and want to catch that, it'll be available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you subscribe and download the Justin Kinder Show podcast, and you'll be able to get the show in its entirety, select segments, and all interviews, including the one with Paul Keels. We had Jim Tressel on, Lieutenant Governor of the state, Jim Tressel. He came on yesterday. How about that? And then Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports. We're going to chat with him coming up around the corner as well. I'm Justin Kinder. It's the Justin Kinder Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll be right back.
The Cincinnati Bengals defense is just like Chick-fil-A. Available on Sundays. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show on 1410 ESPN Radio and on the stream at wingam.com.
Justin Kinner back with you here. Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. 937-518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. You can call, you can text. You don't have to do a dang thing. Do whatever you want. It's free country. There you go. Happy Wednesday. That was Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes, who just kicked off the show with us. Appreciate his time each week. But nonetheless, we'll get back into the college football side of things here in a bit. I'm going to spend some time in the NFL. Bengals get Joe Burrow back coming up here tomorrow night. And now the next part of what I'm going to say is probably just going to be chalked up to, oh, Kenner, you're just a Browns fan. You're a hater, yada, yada, yada. I'm actually looking out for you, the Bengals fan. I actually care about you. I hope that was genuine. I didn't come across that way. I hope. I think that the worst possible thing that could happen for you Bengals fans is this. Joe Burrow is coming back, and that's not the worst part. The worst part that can happen for you Bengals fans is Joe Burrow coming back and them winning out and making the playoffs. I think that is the absolute worst thing, because what you guys want is to make the playoffs. What you guys want is to win games. But what you guys also want is change. You want change up top. You want Duke Tobin gone. You want Zach Taylor gone. You want a new shift in a mindset from the old folks that own the team and the Brown family. And every time Joe Burrow does what Joe Burrow does, and that's overcome adversity, what you guys think is a great storyline is actually the anchor that is holding this team back. And no, I'm not blaming Joe Burrow. He's not doing anything wrong. But I've always made this comparison. I've always made this analogy. I think back to COVID, when we had a lot of coworkers that we really loved working with here that got let go. Right. And those who were fortunate to keep their job, I was one of those. It was like, well, you're going to keep your job, but you're going to absorb responsibilities from so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. All right, cool. I mean, not cool. I didn't want to see him go, but okay, fine. I got to keep my job. Great. And because me and the others that stayed, we did our job very well. And then we did we took care of the responsibilities of those that were let go very well. There was no urgency for our ownership to say, oh, we really need to get that position filled again. No, what they said is, well, we know it's not ideal to not have this position, and this position filled. But the idiots that accepted the responsibilities for no extra pay outside of just the pure joy of getting to stay employed, because they did their job, we're going to just go ahead and not replace those positions because Kinner did such a good job. And that's not really how it all went, but you guys get the picture, because this happened at your job, I'm sure. You lost coworkers as well. You absorbed other responsibilities, and that really, because you did a good job, your company really wasn't in a hurry to spend money to refill those positions, right? That's kind of the position that Joe Burrow is in, is every time that he does his job to the highest level and he overcomes an offensive line that gets him sacked 70 times, getting sacked 70 times should have forced that front office to be desperate to find a way to get it right. But because Joe Burrow took a team to a Super Bowl in a year that he got sacked 70 times, there really wasn't that urgency to take care of that to the highest of levels. You think about 2 years ago, Joe Burrow goes down with an injury, right? And, they lose the rest of the games. But guess what? Because Zach Taylor, whether you want to give him credit or not, he did his job. He coached the team up. Jake Browning, who you guys all hate all of a sudden, he went in and he finished with a winning record post Joe Burrow, and they finished with a 9-8 record. Guess what? That's all great and all. That's fantastic. 9-8. Woo, they kept trying. Then the front office said, well, that shows we're pretty good. We were without Joe Burrow and still won more games than we lost. We finished at 9-8. All we need is to get Joe Burrow back. And guess what? That's all they counted on, was just getting Joe Burrow back. So guess what happened? No changes that offseason. Then you get Joe Burrow last year, all 17 games, no injuries. Finally, he proved he could do it for once. But then guess what happened? They had a really, really, really bad defense. They lost, 4 or 5 one-possession games last year that easily should have been theirs. but the defense just let the teams march down the field and get in scoring position and ultimately win games. But what did the front office say? Well, we're not going to have that bad luck every year. I mean, those were like, 50-50 games. We just need to get a new defensive coordinator and, we'll just throw some rookies out there and we'll pay our guys and call it a day. They made no changes because you went 9-8. And then guess what's happening right now? You're losing and losing a lot. Tension is super high. There was actually reports coming out that some believe Duke Tobin could lose his job at the end of the year, that Zach Taylor could be the former coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a lot of that chatter. Guess what happens if you get what you want? Guess what happens if Joe Burrow comes back and they beat the Ravens on Thursday Night Football and they go on to win out and finish 9-8 for the third straight season? They're either going to make the playoffs and get knocked out right away, or they're going to miss the playoffs at 9-8 for the third straight season. And then there's going to be the Bengals started out 2-0 with Joe Burrow. They only won one game in the games that he was out the rest of the way. And then he comes back and then we win out or we win 5 of our last 6. All we need is Joe Burrow to be healthy. And then it's a very lackluster offseason. It's a repeat of last year and the year before. So while I get that, there's a lot of excitement that you want Joe Burrow to come back tomorrow night, and he is, but you want him to come back and win next week and the week after that and the week after that. That's great, but be careful what you ask for, because this front office is just looking for an excuse to not have to make drastic changes. They don't like change. They don't want to make change. I mean, the only time they change is when they're forced to. They weren't going to pay T. Higgins. It was Jamar Chase who said, pay him or you don't get me, and they were kind of forced to do it. They didn't want to pay Trey Hendrickson, and ultimately people say, the Bengals caved. No, they didn't, because they still didn't give him the long-term extension that he wanted. The Bengals don't want to change. They refuse to change. They change when they absolutely have to. When you get a generational quarterback, Joe Burrow, they didn't want to change how they go about guaranteed contracts, this, that, and the other, but they had to because you had Joe Burrow. You get a generational wide receiver. Sure, he's a scum human being and Jamar Chase who spits in other humans, but hey, that's besides the point. You get a generational wide receiver. You didn't want to spend that much on him. You didn't want to give guaranteed money, but you had to, because you can't let a talent like that just walk out. When the Bengals have to, they'll do it. All you have to do is force them to do it. But when you finish with a winning record, you maybe make the playoffs or just miss it, and they have the mindset of, if Joe Burrow would have just come back 1 week sooner, we'd have been fine. That's all they care about. This is why, and we haven't talked Reds in a while, but this is why I think I think the Reds making the playoffs was actually a bad thing. It's very similar to the Bengals. The Reds making the playoffs, and they backdoor their way in, but the Reds making the playoffs, I think, is a horrible thing. It was fun at the time. I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool. It was cool seeing the Reds finally get to play on a playoff stage. It's been so long, but at the sacrifice of what? At the expense of what? The Reds have already come out and said, hey, look, we spent $115 million last year and had a playoff roster. That's all it costs. If all it costs is $115 million for a playoff roster, we'll just spend that same amount again. And we don't need Kyle. We made the playoffs without Kyle Schwarber. Why the hell would we need Kyle Schwarber? But if they would have missed the playoffs, then the emphasis would have been on, man, we need power bats. We need an outfielder. We need more depth in the bullpen. We need this, this, and this. But now the front office for the Reds is saying, we got a playoff roster. We got a Hall of Fame manager, a generational shortstop that probably should be an outfielder, but that's besides the point. It's frustrating. Sometimes winning causes you to lose. And I think the Reds winning enough to make the playoffs put them in position where we're all going to lose as Reds fans. And I think for you, the Bengals, you finished 9-8 the last 2 years, which is pretty remarkable considering what your team has gone through. But I think because you won games and because you finished above 500, I think that's what made you lose as well, because it just eliminated all urgency and need for change from that front office. And if this team goes on to win the final 6 with Joe Burrow, although it's a great story for you Joe Burrow fans, but I think if you win 6 straight, you're going to have another loss of an offseason, in my opinion. 937-518-1410. Agree or disagree. We'll go. I see calls coming in. I'm like the only human in this damn building right now. Everyone else took the week off. I'm the only goofball that decided to work this week. So bear with me here. I'll take your calls during this commercial break. 937-518-1410. 937-518-1410. Text in. I'm not hating. I'm being serious. I honestly think that Joe Burrow winning, the Bengals winning and flirting with the playoffs is a horrible thing. Because if the front office, if all they think is, well, Joe Burrow was 2-0 with Joe Burrow, we won one game for the next month and a half, 2 months without him, and now we win out once we get him back. See, all we need is Joe Burrow. Yes, you do, but there's way more deficiencies with this team that needs to be addressed. You can't continue to count on an injury-prone quarterback. You're flirting with the potential of 3 straight years missing the playoffs with a generational quarterback in Joe Burrow. Man, we're going to get to Jason Fitz coming up here at the top of the hour. That's coming up around the corner. But more of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers when we come back.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling.
Justin Kinner back with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. You can also text the show as well. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, he'll hang out with us coming up here around the corner. We will be off tomorrow. We're going to be off tomorrow. No show, obviously, Thanksgiving. And then on Friday, we will be off as well. We have Wright State basketball at 2 o'clock. Wright State will be at Butler at 2 o'clock. It's the first time they've actually played since Butler left the Horizon League over a decade ago. So we have that coming up for you throughout the week. So we will not have a show on Friday. We will return, obviously, on Monday, nonetheless. So Wright State last night, they were at Stetson. They were in Florida. They're coming back now. They get a 79-62 win against Stetson. They're now 4-3 on the season, and they'll have a chance against Butler on Friday. They still have from a mid-major perspective, I like their schedule. I like the fact that they're going to be at Butler. All right. As far as non-conference is concerned, they lost to Toledo, but they played Toledo. They played Kent State, Radford, Stetson, at Butler, and then they'll have 3 more non-conference games remaining after Butler. They'll be at Marshall in mid-December, and then they'll have Miami of Ohio at the Nutter Center on the 16th, and then they'll close out against Eastern Michigan, another home game before it's all conference play from there. So I'm telling you, they have this kid named Michael Cooper. I'm telling you, it's one of those things that as a mid-major, you love to have a player like that, but it also sucks because, and I don't know this by any means, but like the likelihood of Wright State being able to keep this kid, he's a true freshman, won a state championship in Indiana last year. Him and his school, he won a state championship where the Pacers play in a sold out arena. I mean, the pressure does not get to this kid. Average about 15 a game. I mean, he's a floor general out there, absolutely beyond talented. And I just have a hard time believing he's going to be with Wright State next year. So I want you guys to get a chance to see this kid play. So we're going to be giving out tickets for when the Raiders return home for that stretch when they have Miami of Ohio and Eastern Michigan. It's going to be a minute before the Raiders return home. Technically, they will have the Fighting Doug Gottliebs, who's not a big fan of mine. Doug Gottlieb leads the Green Bay Phoenix, and they will be at the Nutter Center on the 7th. So we'll be giving out tickets for the Raiders return home on the 7th when Doug Gottlieb and the Raiders. So the reason is I don't care. I'm bored. I have to fill time anyways till Jason can come on. Doug Gottlieb, who I'm a fan of from a sports talk show host. I've always liked Doug. I mean, Doug, Doug tells it like it is. I've always liked that. But what I did not like is last year, I was filling in for Jim Brown. We're at Green Bay last year, and I just happened to take my headset off just to cough or something real quick, and I just happened to hear over by his bench, "Hey, you got 54%. Hey, you got 54%." And I was like, what the heck is he talking about? He was referring the Wright State's post player, Michael Amarbe, shoots 54% at the free throw line, or shot 54% at the free throw line last year. I don't know what he's at this year. But they were referring to him by his free throw percentage. And I was not happy about it. I was ticked off. So I made sure when I was doing off the bench with the guys over at Chatterbox, made sure to bring it up and tag him. And, we went back and forth on social media about it. I thought it was a little ridiculous to call a kid by his poor free throw percentage. I said, keep in mind, they had the worst team in college basketball last year. I said, imagine if people referred to you by your win percentage and called you 14%. He didn't like that. Reminded me that I'm a nobody, that I work for a small radio station. He definitely wins the argument, but besides the point, he now knows who I am. So I'm not a fan of him for that particular reason. I think it's a lot of weird little crossover here. You could be outspoken. You could talk the way you do. You could be aggressive and do stuff a certain way, but you got to win. Doug Gottlieb could be a jerk, but he needs to win basketball games. If he wants to be a jerk, he has to win basketball games. And even then, I'm not a big fan of it. But, a classic example of this is you look over at Hurley, you look over at UConn. That guy drives everybody crazy, but he won back-to-back national championships. All he does is win, so he kind of gets away with being a psychopath. When you're Doug Gottlieb and you're the butt end of everybody's joke, and you're a full-time national sports radio host by day and a part-time mid-major college basketball coach by night, and you have the worst, one of the worst records in all of college basketball, it's kind of a problem. And it reminds me a ton of the conflict that I have right now. This is a hell of a segue. Didn't plan it, but man, this is good stuff. It reminds me of the conflict I have right now with being a fan of the Browns and Shedeur Sanders. Like, I think what makes Shedeur great is also what makes him so unlikable if he doesn't win. He's been able to get away with being cocky and arrogant when he goes to, Jacksonville State or wherever, and when he goes there and that program wasn't winning and then he's the quarterback and then they take off. Man, he's cocky. He's arrogant. He says things that you just normally don't hear athletes say, but he's winning, so more power to him. Then he goes to Colorado and he was very cocky, very arrogant. And I can't say he won. I mean, he finished the game above 500, but he played a major role. I mean, Travis Hunter can't be Travis Hunter on the offensive side of the ball if he doesn't have a good quarterback throwing in the football. We know that Shedeur was a good college quarterback. He was. Whether you guys want to admit that or not, he was, from a talent perspective, getting first-round draft grades across the board. Mel Kiper drives everybody nuts, but, I mean, he said from a pure talent standpoint, Shedeur Sanders should have been the first quarterback taken off the board in last year's draft. And there's not enough to say that he was right at this point, but hey, he's won the job, or at least stole the job, or got the job, positioned himself to get it. He's done what he's supposed to. But like Shedeur, we saw that, man, he was a big story in college when Colorado would jump out to that 3-1 start. Remember, they beat Nebraska. They get off to this big start. He's talking, he's doing his thing. And Colorado, every celebrity and their mother is showing up to these games. And it was like, man, they're taking college football by storm. Well, they didn't have a life raft the rest of the way because he didn't play, the team didn't play great football the rest of the way. So his cocky, arrogant personality kind of rubbed people the wrong way. So when you come to Cleveland and they interview you before and you say, hey, I'm what they've been looking for, I was ticked off right away before the game even started. I said, look, I'm a fan of a team that the quarterback is always the butt end of every joke that's said to me about my team. For once, I just want a quarterback that everybody likes. And for all you jerks out there that try to say the whole, well, you had a quarterback in Baker Mayfield, you made my life hell about Baker Mayfield when he was in Cleveland. When Baker Mayfield was the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, you guys made fun of all the commercials. He has more commercials than wins. You were wrong, but it's besides the point. You didn't like Baker's personality. You didn't like all the commercials he was in. You didn't like the hand gestures and all the other stuff that he did. You thought he was too cocky and arrogant. And it was fine when they were winning. When he came in as a rookie and they started out like 0-2 or 0-2-1 or whatever it was, and then he comes in at halftime against the Jets and leads them from behind to get a win. They went from 0-16 to a 7-win team from one year to the next. It was fine because they were winning. So you could be cocky, you could be arrogant, you could be brash, you could be all those things because they were winning. And then a year later, they went out and got Odell Beckham Jr., right? They got Austin Hooper. They made him one of the highest paid tight ends in football, a very good blocking tight end at the time. I think he's with the Patriots now. They had a very good defense, and then injuries and just inconsistencies. The locker room got away. Just wasn't a good scene. They were losing a lot of games. You all hated Baker Mayfield. It's the same thing. Every time the Browns even get somewhat of a quarterback, their personality has to make it easy for everyone to hate on this team. Deshaun Watson, I don't think I need to explain that one. I think that one was pretty damn obvious. But Shedeur can act like this. He could say these crazy things. But he has to win. And if he doesn't win, it's not going to go well. And it's cringe. Some of the stuff he says is cringe. I thought it was way too much about him in the postgame. But then I think there also is something to athletes not wanting to conform to the ways of which we have made sports media be like, oh, well, you have to talk this way. Well, why do I have to talk this way? To appease some random boob in Dayton, Ohio? I mean, that's a fair point, counterpoint, if you will. But you could talk however you want. You can act however you want. Just go out there and win. So if Shedeur, if he's cocky, if he's arrogant, if he's confident, however you want to frame it, he can act however he wants. But the bottom line is you better go out there and win. And the Browns have a shot with the 49ers coming up this weekend. He can say whatever he wants. He can act however he wants, but he needs to go out there and win. I don't even know what the line is. I haven't even checked that, by the way, for this Sunday. The Browns are going to welcome in the 49ers. I mean, San Francisco's a 4.5-point favorite. They're a 4.5-point favorite. I saw Brock Purdy last week throw 4 interceptions or 3 interceptions or whatever it was. He threw 3 interceptions. Now, they beat the Panthers 20-9. The problem is the Panthers couldn't run the football, and they don't have great wide receivers. All right, and their defense is okay. The Browns' defense is way better, but I think the problem is the Niners' defense or the Browns' offense is a little bit of a better version than the Panthers at this point. But man, I don't know. I don't have a hot take about this matchup with the Niners, but I do believe that this is more of a tryout. This is more of an audition. That this is more of an opportunity to see Shedeur go out there and prove that he's a starting caliber quarterback. Because here's what's coming up for Cleveland. Shedeur's the starting quarterback moving forward, or at least for the immediate future. But here's what's coming up for the Cleveland Browns, all right? I look at these games coming up, and I'm intrigued. I think they could beat the Niners. With that defense, we just watched Brock Purdy throw 3 interceptions against a less talented defense. I could see the Browns beating the Niners. Browns-Titans in 2 weeks in Cleveland. The Browns are at home for 4 of the next 5 weeks. The Browns have the Niners, the Titans, the Bills, and the Steelers all at home. For the next 5 weeks, all in Cleveland. They could beat the 49ers. They could beat the Titans. All right. They could beat the Steelers without Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, and especially in Cleveland. And the Bills, based on what we know about the Bills right now, I think there's a shot. Just because the Bills' defense has been so bad. You can talk about Josh Allen. You can talk about their run game, but the Browns have the best run defense in the NFL. You can't run on them. The Bills' offensive line's a little banged up. The Browns can get to the quarter. Like, I've said this from the very beginning, just like the Cincinnati Bengals. They don't need elite defense. They don't need an elite defense. They just need an average defense, and that offense will put up enough points for them to win. And in Cleveland, it's the opposite. They don't need an elite offense. They just need an average offense. They need an offense that can go out there, run the football, put up some points, about 20 to 24 in that range. And guess what? They did it this past week, 24 points, and they won the dang football game. So we'll see what ultimately happens when it's all said and done. But everyone's so negative all the time. So negative. Oh, Cleveland, Shedeur, they're going to draft another quarterback in the draft. Do you realize if Shedeur is the guy, if Shedeur looks the part, if Shedeur is actually a very good rookie quarterback for the final 6 games, how are you to say that they don't have as good a shot as Cincinnati does to make the playoffs at this point? Because it's a long shot for both. But now you got to ask yourself, you got to look at the strengths of both teams. Can the Cincinnati Bengals offense, is the Cincinnati Bengals offense as elite as the Browns defense is elite? And is the Browns offense as bad as the Bengals defense? Here's the deal. The Browns' strength is their defense, and I think that that's a stronger side of the ball than the Bengals offense. And I think that the weakness of the Bengals is their defense, and I think that weakness is a bigger problem than the weakness of the Browns, which is on offense, because I think it just got a nice little kick in the pants with getting Shedeur at quarterback. I think Cleveland has a legit shot to climb back into this playoff picture. I mean, and I'm going to look at Kevin Stefanski and say, if they're going to come up short in this playoff conversation by a game, if they miss the playoffs by 1 game, by 2, I'm going to look at that Bengals game for 1, because that should have been the Browns. The Browns messed that up. They should have won that game. Good for the Bengals. They won a game that they normally lose. That should have been the Browns game in week 1. That's really killer right now. But if you go to Shedeur a week earlier, 2 weeks earlier, it's different. It's different. I think you go to Shedeur against the Jets coming out of the bye week, 2 weeks with first-team reps. I think that they beat the Jets. And I think they should have beat the Bengals in week 1. They're sitting at 3-8. They'd be sitting at 5-3. Or 5-6, I'm sorry. They'd be sitting at 5-6. And that's a big difference right there. Just those 2 games. You beat the Bengals in week 1 like you're supposed to. Like they had the opportunity to. I don't want to say supposed to, but the opportunity to. And then you take care of the Jets coming out of the bye week if you make the switch to Shedeur Sanders after the Jets got rid of their 2 best defensive players. Those are 2 games that are going to haunt the Browns the rest of the way. That would have put the Browns at 5-6, as I mentioned, and they'd be a game behind the Baltimore Ravens right now for an AFC North championship spot. And also sitting at 5 wins would have put them 2 games behind a wild card spot. So yes, I think that this team's closer than you guys want to give them credit for, because that defense is a Super Bowl defense. That's a Super Bowl defense, whether you want to admit it or not. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We will get to Jason Fitz coming up at the top of the hour. And then we will, if you missed our conversation with Jim Tressel from yesterday's show, we'll close out hour number 2 with that as well. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Jason Fitz, we'll chat with him, talk about the Browns and the Bengals. One question to keep in mind during the break. The Browns have Myles Garrett, who's having an MVP-level season, 18 sacks with 6 weeks to go. The record is 22. And 13 of the 18 sacks that Myles Garrett has at this point have come within the last 4 games. He's on an all-time tear right now. But the Browns just keep wasting this generational pass rushing talent. it's disappointing. The Bengals are wasting two generational talents in Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But which organization has wasted their talent more, the Browns with Myles Garrett or the Bengals with Joe Burrow? We'll discuss that with Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports. He joins us next. All right, and we are back. The Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. It's a short week. Again, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll be back after today on Monday, but obviously tomorrow, Thanksgiving. Friday, Wright State will be at Butler, and we'll have that for you right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. That's a 2 o'clock tip-off, and we'll be live with our Raider pregame coverage beginning at 1:45. So we'll have that all for you on Friday. And then we got the game. We got the rivalry, Ohio State, Michigan coming up on Saturday. Obviously, we spent a lot of time on that here throughout the week. Shout out to Paul Keels, who we kick the show off with. Again, we kick off the show with him every week on Thursday, but we're doing it today, of course, or we did it today with us being off tomorrow. And then, of course, the legend Jim Tressel, awesome enough to give us some time as well. So got to keep it going. We still got to dip our toes back into the NFL. The Bengals get their quarterback back. The Browns might have their quarterback of the future, or at least the immediate future. Who knows what the hell's going on in both cities at this point. And one guy that's very familiar with all the chaos that goes on in both of those cities with both of those teams is our friend from Yahoo Sports, Jason Fitz. Jason, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for giving us time this week. How are we today?
Man, I'm spectacular. And thanks. I appreciate you having me. Always a blast to hang out. Thankful for our friendship, brother. Thankful we get to talk a little football.
Absolutely. So, and this is not going to sound like the flex that many people think that I'm trying to flex here, but my bad team beat your bad team over the weekend in a game that nobody cares about outside of, well, the quarterback for the Browns and Shedeur Sanders. All right, we got to see it, and we got to see him start. We got to see him a little bit against the Ravens, but we got the full experience, the full Shedeur experience, the week build up to it, all the drama, the team's against him, the NFL's against him, everyone's against him. The kid has everything, but everyone's against him. What was your takeaway of how he looked against your Raiders this past Sunday?
So this was the worst case scenario for everybody because he did the things that he does that makes people that want him to succeed feel like he can succeed. And he does the things that he does that makes people that root against him feel like, oh, he can't make it in this thing. Like, I want to stress this, number one. Playing against the Raiders right now, I believe wholeheartedly, although they played earlier this year, if the Raiders played the Titans would win by 2 touchdowns. It has fallen apart for the Raiders. And when I say it's bad, the best way I can describe it is like if Kobe in his prime decided that he wanted to take me on a basketball court, and then right before he took me on, somebody came and lopped off one of my legs, that's where the Raiders defense is. It is one of the worst defenses, and this is arguably in my lifetime as a fan, I think this might be the worst football team I've ever seen the Raiders field. So what did we learn about Shedeur Sanders? The real answer to that, that's not a popular hot take, is nothing. Just like we didn't learn anything about the Cowboys when they looked really good against the Raiders. It's like, hey, guys, at some point, calm everything down. It's the Raiders. And so look at the great completion. And it was a beautiful throw on that rollout. But then ask everybody when you look at the all-22, the hell were they covering? Like, what were they doing on the back end of that defense? The answer is nobody has any idea. So look at the 66-yard touchdown pass. It was really just a quick screen, terrible tackle, right? Like, so we just didn't learn anything. Shedeur was good enough to deserve another week. I think we've seen that there's not really a spark with Dylan Gabriel. This whole thing feels failed at this point. And it's failed because now you're in this quick rush against the clock where Shedeur's got to show enough over the next 6 weeks that the Browns choose not to participate in the quarterback portion of the draft, even though they may have a top 5 pick. Like, it's just all wildly complicated. So I hope for the sake of Shedeur that he goes out and crushes it the next 6 weeks, eliminates all questions, and the Browns have a starter for the next 20 years. I don't believe at my core that a conspiracy theory dropped him to the 5th round. I don't believe that the league passed on him to teach him a lesson. I don't believe anybody's for him or against him. I just don't think he's an epic starting quarterback in the NFL. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, I think what we saw was one good game from a player that frankly, I think Mason Rudolph could have had the same game against that Raiders defense.
Yeah, and it's like, and I'm a Shedeur guy. I trust me. I'm a Browns fan. Everyone's like, you just don't want him to be the quarterback. I'm like, I'll take anybody to be the quarterback. I don't care if Tyrod Taylor all of a sudden turns into a superstar quarterback. I'll take Tyrod Taylor. I don't care who the quarterback is in Cleveland. But Shedeur's personality, I love it and dislike it at the same time. When you watch like a movie or a show and they're trying to depict that really overly confident athlete, that cocky athlete, and it's cheesy acting, it's not acting. That's him. Like, I was watching Coach Carter, I'm the real Ty Crane. Like, that's so cheesy. Nobody does that. No one talks like he does. He kind of talks like that. It's just kind of crazy. And it works if you're winning. And luckily he won the game against the Raiders. But what happens when that same false confidence is there? if they start losing again moving forward, and they have the Niners coming up. Like, I don't know. It could be, we saw this with Baker to a certain degree. That personality was all fun in games where they were winning, but when the losses started piling up, that personality, it snowballed into something that was too overwhelming for the franchise to take care of.
Yeah, and what's interesting? Like, none of us say a damn thing about Drake May's personality. All we're talking about is the way Drake May plays football, right? None of us really have anything to say about Jaden Daniels' personality. We don't talk about how he plays football. Like, at some point, with like Caleb, plenty of people have plenty to say about Caleb's personality, right? Like, I think it just becomes a driving portion of the narrative for so many people. And I'm with you. Like, at the end of the day, I want my favorite team to have a quarterback. I don't even care if that quarterback is likable. Like, frankly, if we're being honest, Jackson Dart said plenty as he became the Giants starter and dedicated some of those wins to people that might be controversial to some of the fan base. And he can politically, to some, be polarizing. I don't care. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what you believe in. I don't care who you love. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care about any of it. I just want to see my favorite team have a quarterback. And for you as a Browns fan, I say the same thing. If your franchise has been forever without a guy, I don't care what it takes to get the guy. Get the guy. So I've got nothing one way or the other against Shedeur. Frankly, I don't care. If Shedeur is wildly successful, for me as a Raiders fan, that takes the Browns out of the quarterback conversation, makes the path for us to find a quarterback even easier. Like, I got no skin in the game. I root for players to be successful because at the end of the day, players sacrifice their whole lives to get on the field and try and be great at something. I always root for players. It's no different here. I just don't think Shedeur is that. I mean, I watched every snap. I covered him in college football. I think he had really, really good moments. And we see that from a lot of quarterbacks in college football that have really, really good moments. And they don't become great pro quarterbacks. Great pro quarterbacks are guys that can save you when they need to save you. But at the end of the day, they can execute your offense with timing, with delivery in a smart way. Like, Matt Stafford is not beating anybody with his athleticism. He's beating everybody with his mind. And he's the MVP right now, right? Like, that's a great quarterback. So if Shedeur can develop to the point that he can quickly process, get rid of the football, great. He's going to be great. If he can't, then he's going to be that sort of quarterback that makes maddening plays in both directions constantly.
Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, hanging out with us here as the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. So I threw this question out last week heading in to the debut, or the starting debut of Shedeur, if you will. But I said there's a lot of what ifs, there's a lot of question marks, there's a lot of the he's a polarizing figure. We're talking about his personality, his dad, this, that, the other. I said, from a team perspective, though, what does it mean for, like, what if he is good? Like, put a positive spin on this. Not you, but just us in general with the talk of Shedeur. This organization for 3+ decades has been just begging for a franchise quarterback. What if he is the guy? What if after all this noise, after all this mess, they end up accidentally in the 5th round, a controversial pick ends up becoming the diamond in the rough? What if he is good? What if he is the guy moving forward? It totally changes the direction of this franchise, a direction that the franchise has been begging to find itself in that position.
I mean, if we're being honest, what if he tears it up the last 6 weeks of the season and he's epic? But don't we also have to then turn around and tip of the, like, I will, not everybody will, tip of the cap to Kevin Stefanski? Like, hey, because so many people are going to say you kept him off the field. What if they were developing him to get him ready? What if all of this time actually helped the Browns get a quarterback ready? Like, what if we assign benefit of the doubt all the way across? Then what you have is the 2-time coach of the year that finds his quarterback of the future with one of the best defenses in the NFL, right? Like, now all of a sudden the Browns are answering much different questions going into this offseason. Now all of a sudden the Browns are saying, hey, do we want to be a player for George Pickens? Because if we've got our young quarterback, we certainly want to be aggressive at the wide receiver position, right? Like, everything changes if Shedeur goes out over the course of the next 6 weeks and absolutely destroys it, especially in a division that, like, if we're being honest right now, I don't trust the Bengals to ever take advantage of the quarterback that they have. So the Bengals look as broken to me as anybody that has a star quarterback. I think the Steelers are going to lose the rest of their games and end up with a losing record and fire Tomlin, which was my preseason prediction anyway. So, and the Ravens, like, when are we just going to acknowledge that Baltimore's not good? Like, Baltimore this year isn't good. They're winning games. Thank good. So, like, all of a sudden the entire offseason looks different for Cleveland if they find out they have a quarterback. Like, it changes the entire way we feel about the franchise for the next 3 years if Shedeur goes in and just has Jackson Dart-like level. Like, Jackson Dart is not coming out. Like, he didn't put up numbers in his limited time so far with the Giants that are Peyton Manning worthy, but he's a spark plug and you've seen enough that people believe in him. That's what belief comes from this.
Myles Garrett, with all the noise of quarterback, not even talking about the MVP level season that he's having. I mean, already 18 and a half sacks, whatever the number is. 13 of those 18 sacks have come in the last, 4 games. 3 of those came obviously against the Raiders this past week, but no one's even talking about the monster season that he's having, which is crazy because he's been dominant for so long, and this might be the best he's ever looked, and really making the Browns look good for being willing to give him that $40 million a year. But let me ask you this. We talk so much about the Bengals, or so many people bring up the Bengals and how they're wasting the talent of Joe Burrow. You look at the Browns wasting this window of Myles Garrett. Which organization do you believe has wasted their superstar more over the last couple of years? The Bengals with Joe Burrow or the Browns with Myles Garrett?
It's harder to find a quarterback to the level of Joe Burrow. So it has to be Joe Burrow. That has to be the bigger waste for me. And I'm going to go back to, I'm going to try and find it here. I got some information, and I'll credit ESPN and Stats and Info. I had a buddy there look this up for me. But the fact is, as I try and pull it up, quarterbacks, or actually, I'm sorry, pass rushers in the NFL that are epic and have epic years just don't win a lot of football games. And that's historically. So it's kind of crazy when you start to look at some of the numbers over the course of it. I think about 40% of the people that actually put up record numbers of sacks actually win games. It's not what you would think. So the concept of pass rushers losing their opportunity to win a bunch of games is actually normal. Like, as much as we talk about some of the great seasons, let's remember Strahan's record-setting season, whether we believe he set the record or not, and Mark Gastineau can get weird about that too. But whether we believe that or not, I think at some point you do have to look at it and say, okay, did they win a lot of games that year? The answer is no, they didn't. So when you look across the board, having a great pass rusher doesn't necessarily mean that you win a bunch of games. And that's just par for the course. When you have Joe Burrow, you got to win. Like, at this point, Joe Burrow is becoming Dan Marino. Like, this is Dan Marino 2.0. Dan Marino goes to the Super Bowl rookie year, and everybody says, oh, it's going to be fine. He's going to be back. It's going to be great. Never goes again. Joe Burrow goes early in his career. Oh, it's going to be fine. They took down the Chiefs. He's going to go back. It's going to be fine. Never goes again. And there's just, especially when you look around this year, like, I can excuse what's happened the last several years. I can sit back and say, okay, well, if we're being honest, like, in the last few years, you got Mahomes, you got Josh Allen, you got Lamar Jackson, you have other Hall of Famers. You lost to other Hall of Famers. That's fine. This year, the Chiefs are not who the Chiefs have been. The Ravens are not who the Ravens have been. And the Bills are not who the Bills have been. And you're letting the Patriots step up? Man, that just, like, I know Joe Burrow's missed time with turf toe, and that's nobody's fault, but my God, it just feels like, when is there going to be the time? This was the year the door was cracked open. For the Bengals to not be able to win in that year just feels disgusting to me.
Yeah, and it's one of the, so Joe, and this is a perfect segue into Thanksgiving night, Joe Burrow making his return, and he fielded a couple questions, I think it was yesterday, about a lot of, there's some not reporter, but just media, fans, critics out there who are like, why is he even coming back? Why are you risking it? I actually like Joe Burrow's response. Like, if he's ready to go 100%, he's a competitor. Why would he choose to sit out? Why would the team choose to sit him out? So I get that. But there's a lot being made about his return tomorrow night. He's coming back. Joe Flacco kind of fell off a little bit the last couple of weeks, of course. But overall, the Bengals have had the number one offense in the league since Joe Flacco took over about a month and some change ago. It sounds crazy, but what's different for the Bengals getting Joe Burrow back? What are the chances that you give them of maybe making a little miracle comeback back into this playoff conversation? For all the reasons you mentioned, the AFC is just not very strong at this point. What kind of chance do you give the Bengals, if any, with Joe Burrow coming back now?
I mean, that's where, again, like, I think I've made this joke to you before, but it's like, is he playing on the defensive side of the ball? Like, man, I want this so bad. And maybe the reason that I get angry with the Bengals organization is because I'm just jealous. I'll be honest. Like, I'm jealous. My favorite team has never been able to find a quarterback. Your market's favorite team has a quarterback, and they can't turn around and win with him. Like, so maybe it's that makes me so rage filled with this. But man, at some point, certain organizations are bad at identifying talent. And I know the Bengals have tried for years to identify the right talent on the offensive line. Hasn't always gone well. The Titans, a team I know particularly well from my time in Nashville, they always tried to get wide receivers. They drafted wide receivers. They just couldn't get wide receivers that were worth a damn, right? Like, some organizations struggle. The whatever reason, Zach Taylor struggles to find the right people to lead a defense. It happened for like 2 years where Lou Anarumo was supposed to be the answer. He was going to get a head coaching job, and then it all of a sudden fell apart. At some point, you got to look at it in the mirror and say, what's happening to my process that just constantly makes us bad on one side of the football. And again, I'll go back to Dan Marino. The failure for any old person that's listening right now, every single year you would go out back then, and we all remember this. Like, we would go out, we would buy the NFL preview magazines, and the story on the Dolphins was always the same. Can't find a running back. Can't find a running back. Can't find a running back. They never got any support around Marino. And the whole time we all sat there and said, man, how in the heck do you mismanage it that badly? I think the Bengals are just can't find a defense, can't find a defense, can't find a defense over and over and over again. And it's gross. It's gross to see. And so would I love to see a way where the Bengals can win their way back into it? Yeah, but there's just too much chaos in front of them now. Like the Jags, the Texans, the Colts are all going to be vying for playoff spots. As bad as the Chargers' offensive line is, they're still way ahead in this thing. Like, you dug too big of a hole to be able to dig your way out of it.
Plus, and I have a different look of this too. I've always used this example. I remember back when COVID hit, a lot of layoffs happened. I was fortunate, Kev, my guy Kev, a couple of us were fortunate to keep our jobs, but part of keeping our jobs was we had to absorb a lot of other people's responsibilities. And we were grateful, but then that ended up becoming the worst thing possible, because when it came time to hire people back, they're like, why should we spend money here and there? You guys did a pretty good job, even with all the shortcomings in the company. You got the job done. And I compare that, and that's not just us. I know that happened in a lot of different industries. I look at Joe Burrow and what he's been able to overcome during his time in Cincinnati. If I'm a Bengals fan, I'm kind of rooting that it doesn't go well. I think they've been bailed out the last 2 years, finishing 9-8 with him, with the really bad defense last year. Oh, geez, that scared the hell out of me. My mic just popped up. Damn it. I was on a roll too. No, but they've overcome deficiencies and been able to get it done. If they run the table, go 9-8 and make the playoffs, that's not hitting rock bottom. It feels like it right now. And if there's any way to get that front office's attention, I think it has to be rock bottom. Joe Burrow, if they go on a winning streak here, I think that's the worst thing that could potentially happen for this organization. I think they need to hit rock bottom. And I think winning 9 games, oh, look, we were 9-8. We won 5-6 straight to close out the season. We played better down the stretch. We just, Joe Burrow's healthy. We'll be fine heading into next year. I think the best thing for the Bengals, as goofy as it sounds, is for them to continue hitting rock bottom, even with Joe Burrow coming back. And I don't mean him getting hurt. I just mean them not being able to overcome that bad defense.
Yeah, no, look, at the end of the day, 9-8 for the Bengals needs to be treated the same way that a 3-loss season would be treated at Ohio State every year. 9-8 is just not an acceptable result. I found these sack numbers. Can I give you this sack number that is going to blow your mind about Myles Garrett? Players with a historic number of sacks don't come from great teams. There are 5 players in NFL history with at least 22 sacks in a season since 1982. None of their teams won 10 or more games. Only the 2021 Steelers made the playoffs as a 7 seed. Every other person that's ever had 22 sacks in a season did not make the playoffs. There have been 13 individual seasons where a player has had at least 20 sacks. Just 6 of those 13 seasons resulted in a playoff berth. Only 2 reached the Super Bowl: Aaron Donald, Lawrence Taylor. So what is that? Like, causation, correlation, I don't know. I know that to win a Super Bowl, you have to have a great pass rusher. We see it year in and year out. You have to have a great pass rusher. But I know the numbers show that when you have the best sacker in the league, you don't make the playoffs.
Is it like we don't really know. Is it like a dollar thing because it's so much money? I mean, that's strange.
It's a weird number. It's just a weird, I think sometimes it's just, I don't know. I feel like great pass rushers get stuck on bad teams, and more right now in the NFL, we're seeing it across the board. Like the amount of wasted seasons we're seeing for Myles Garrett, for let's add Watt, Steelers aren't doing anything with him. Let's add Max Crosby to it. Raiders don't do anything with him. Go up and down the board. Like how many great sack artists are we actually scared of? The funny thing is I'd rather have Myles Garrett than Jared Verse any day of the week. Jared Verse is going to make more of an impact on his team than Myles Garrett ever can, because Jared Verse isn't on a team that's garbage.
All right. Well, this is what snapped off, by the way, for those.
That's the worst. The little plastic piece that just comes.
Yeah, it just popped right off. So that way people don't just think I'm afraid of my own shadow. As that goes. And last thing on the way out, again, appreciate Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, giving us some time. College football. I love the rivalry. I love the fact, that it's here, but it's also bittersweet because it's the final week of the regular season, although these massive games are coming up. So that's cool too. But the season's winding down, which is crazy. Ohio State, Michigan. I've always appreciated your take on this because we've always been pretty much on the same side. Of course, this is a massive game. It's the biggest game of the regular season every year for both of these teams. I just don't put it in the category of it's everything. Last year, Ohio State loses to Michigan. Ryan Day, everyone wanted him fired, and then they go on to win a national championship, and now they're trying to find a place for a statue for the guy. That's just how this works. But another opportunity for Ryan Day to get a win against Michigan. He's lost 4 straight. How do you anticipate this playing out? Does Ryan Day, after winning a national championship, number 1 team in the country, undefeated, another heavy favorite, heading into this, does Ryan Day get it done? Do the Buckeyes beat Michigan tomorrow on Saturday?
Oh, I think Ohio State smokes them. I think it's a gross football game. That being said, I asked Santa Claus an 8-pound, 6-ounce baby Jesus for one thing this year for Christmas. I want Michigan to win this game, and I want Ohio State fans, hear me out.
Yeah,
I want Michigan to win this game and win it big. I want Michigan just to go out and just shock the world. And then I want Ohio State to win every game left in front of them all the way to a national championship. And then everybody's going to have to grapple with what it feels like to be back-to-back national champions that have lost the game twice. And that is when I will finally win the argument to the world that the game, while important to everybody that lives there because it's the game, is actually irrelevant. It should just be changed from the game to a game because they don't raise banners for it. It's just another game. At the end of the day, the way that I get this, and you all will hate me for it, Michigan has to win. They have to win convincingly too. And then Ohio State rolls through the rest, wins a national championship. Ohio State fans, I'm rooting for, I am begging Santa Claus to deliver you a national championship. You should be pleased with me, but you will all hate me because I've also rooted for you to lose the game.
So, and keep in mind, they had a chance. I mean, I think it was 2022 when Ohio State and Georgia played. If you remember, Ohio State lost to Michigan that year. I mean, that was a back and forth game. Ohio State was this close to winning that. If they beat Georgia, and they very well easily were a kick away from doing it, they would have been beaten up on TCU or whoever it was that made it past Michigan that year. And they would have won a national title that year too, in my opinion, after losing to Michigan. So they've come close, on many occasions, but I don't think they want to put themselves in that position. But it's another wrinkle to the rivalry of, now you don't have to win a national championship. But again, Ryan Day, Ohio State, we'll see. We'll see. But all week, we had a caller yesterday, Shaw, who I think you've argued with before.
Yes,
Had a decent idea that I actually kind of liked. Doesn't happen often. Shout out Shaw. But he said, take the Michigan-Ohio State game, and instead of closing out the season with it every year, we kick off every single season. That's your first opponent every year. There's no tune-up games. There's no who the hell is that university. It's just Ohio State, Michigan every year kicks off the season. I actually really liked that idea. That could be a new tradition, and that just sets the tone for the season. I really like that idea more than anything else.
Opening the college football season with rivalry week is an epic idea. When I am eventually czar of college football, I will add that to the other thing that I want to implement, which is standardized scheduling between all 4 Power 4 conferences. Much like in the AFC, when you finish in 4th place, you will play every 4th place team from the AFC from the year prior. I want to implement a system where the 4th place team in the SEC next year will play the 4th place team in the Big 10, the ACC, and the Big 12. Let's normalize 4th place. Like that way we eliminate some of these Coastal Carolina games that nobody cares about. And instead, at least give me the 4th best Big 10 team versus the 4th best SEC team next year as the game. I think that'd be interesting. But I love starting with rivalry week. Give it to me, inject it in my veins. It will make the whole tone of the beginning of the season matter. But at the end of the day, just remember, Ohio State fans, no matter how much a Michigan fan turns around and says, well, we won the game. Who cares? You have a national championship. Who cares? And when you get 2 straight national championships and they still stop you in the store and say, yeah, but we won the last 2 games, you can just flash your rings. Go buy your replica rings. Flash your rings. Flash your back-to-back Natty championship shirts and ask them if they want a back-to-back winner of the game shirts.
Or just act like John Cena and just.
Yes. Yes.
All you got to do. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports. Jason, you the man. Tell everyone where they can follow your work. What projects you have going on this week heading into the final week of the regular season.
We're pretty light this week, but Yahoo Sports Daily is what everybody should check out. 9 to 11 a.m. wherever you get your free TV, like Roku and Tubi and all those places. Monday through Friday, we're there, although we're off the rest of the week. And then you can also check us out on YouTube. We're everywhere. Just follow me on social media at Jason Fitz.
All right, Jason, you the man. I hope you and your family have an awesome Thanksgiving, and we'll talk next week.
You too, my friend. Thanks for have a great Thanksgiving.
All right, good stuff. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. All right, 937-518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. We'll hear from you guys when we come back.